All right, we're going to get started. Welcome to Innovate State, the first one of spring semester. How's everyone doing? Woo. Oh my gosh, that's the most awake I've heard an audience in a while. So, by the way, my name is Aaron Richard. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications at the Burgess Institute for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. We are so thrilled to have you here tonight to welcome back Ryan and Aaron to campus. So I'm just up here to give you a couple of updates and then I'll wing my way out of here. So you should know a couple of things are coming up. We host several events throughout the semester and we're very proud of all of these events. Innovate State, there are 5 evenings that you can come and enjoy speakers and learn a whole bunch of what they have to say and get some insights. You can go to eship.msu.edu/innovate-state and find all of our speakers there. They're always going to be in this room and usually from 6 to 7 p.m. Find out the dates, register early, they fill up fast. The next Innovate State is on February 7th. That is going to be a student panel, so you can hear from students just like you and find out what their experience has been being plugged into the entrepreneurial community. You should also know that 2-day venture, Spring Session 1, is coming up here. Registration closes on February 3rd. The event will be held right here on February 10th and 11th. You have to apply for 2-day venture a week before the deadline. So February 3rd, get your application and ideas in and have a 36-hour startup marathon, and it is a fun time. So I encourage everyone to go. It also counts as an entrepreneurship and innovation experience. So there you go. So you should also know that Burgess New Venture Challenge 2023, the applications to compete are right now open. They will be open until February 13th. How many of you here have heard of the Burgess New Venture Challenge? Oh, fantastic. There's like 4 hands, and I like that. That means I can inform everybody. So the Burgess New Venture Challenge is our annual pitch competition, and there are $50,000 worth of total scholarship prizes. I said $50,000. Top prize is $15,000. So get your apps in, compete. It is a great time. We have 15 semifinalists and a ride of a time at the Graduate Hotel. Finally, all right. So I am so excited for tonight's guests. Aaron and Ryan Letzeiser. I've been panicking about the last name.
I don't have to do it.
Yeah, okay. Aaron and Ryan Letzeiser, they are Spartans, they are leaders, they are entrepreneurs, and all-around good humans. Together, they are the co-founders of Obie, a venture-backed insurance and risk management platform that serves 17 million real estate investors in the U.S. We are lucky to welcome Aaron and Ryan back to the campus this evening. And they're sitting down with my colleague and friend, Ken Smuziak, which if you've been in any of our entrepreneurship classes, you recognize Ken. So without further ado, and done with me babbling, please give a warm welcome to Aaron and Ryan.
I really have to use this mic. I feel kind of like a DJ. It's kind of fun. Welcome to Innovate State. This is a lot of fun. This is kicking off the semester. Always a good time. I've had a good time today getting a chance to meet with these guys, and I think this would be a fun conversation. I also got to visit them in Chicago last summer and learn a little bit more about Obie, and when we got you guys on the docket, I was pretty excited because you got just some really cool stories. Plus, like, you have a brother dynamic and co-founders, which I think is a really cool experience that we'll talk about. And then I know during our pre-call, like, there's just so many cool things we can talk about. I think you guys are in for a good time. I think it'll be fun. I'll try to get out of the way as much as possible. So I like to always kick off the first kind of question we always have when guests come back, at least when I'm hosting, is tell us about your time at Michigan State. Like, what were the formative experiences? What were the things you remember most? Anything in particular set the stage for kind of what you're up to now, or fond memories? We'll start there. By the way, we just got shut down at Crunchies because apparently they're replacing the refrigerator. So it was kind of a bummer. We didn't get to go there. We went to Peanut Barrel instead, so it was fun. We got to relive that little moment. So.
No bucket for us.
Yeah, no bucket of beer beforehand.
Yeah.
All right. Tell us about MSU.
You want to start?
You
came first.
Yeah. So I'm actually a transfer student from Western Michigan. I landed at Michigan State, and I actually got a degree in horticulture. So it's funny for me to sit on stage today, and I've had a very wandering journey to become an entrepreneur and actually end up in the insurance world, which I'm sure you all think is super boring. It's
Totally
a very
is.
unsexy industry. We'll try and make this conversation as lively as possible, but my time here was spent with a lot of social activities. I worked really hard in maintaining my ISON status while I was here. But at the end of the day, this university has done a lot to support me and was able to take me in from Western and really propel me and my career on a very specific path. It's been a wandering one for sure, and I've already kind of alluded to that. So I basically went to Michigan State, ended up in the '08 crisis. You guys were all probably about 5 years old at that point. Got a sales job, moved to Florida, went to grad school, and came out and went into the real estate investment world. And I saw a lot of problems. And anybody that's looking to become an entrepreneur, just be aware of all the problems that you see and face in everyday life, in your jobs. And ultimately, a lot of those problems can materialize into businesses, and that's where we ended up today. We saw a problem inside the insurance business and are attacking it head on.
Yeah, I'm the complete opposite. I was the James Madison kid. My life was stuck in a book for 4 straight years. Thought I was going to go to law school. Lived in 260 South Case. Yeah, I'm a political theory major, and I now run a tech company in the insurance space. So your journey can take you in some pretty interesting ways that I think we'll probably get into a little bit tonight. But yeah, it was definitely not the path that I thought I was going to end up in, but certainly some interesting opportunities presented itself, and for better or for worse, what I hope that you kind of take from this conversation and more about Ryan and I's journey is if you have something that you're pretty passionate about and you think that there's some good product market fit and there's an issue that exists out there, be a cockroach, right? The company that we'll probably talk about a lot tonight should have died 100 different ways, 100 different times. But we continued to at least stay alive and continue to try and iterate. And to the point Ryan made, I think for better or for worse, I didn't end up in law school, but the foundation I think that I got from Michigan State and the journey that I went on here and kind of the critical thinking skills that James Madison beat in my head certainly prepared me pretty well for the journey I think that was ultimately ahead of us.
Yeah. So let's talk about the journey a little bit. So post-graduation, Ryan, we got a little bit of taste of what you went through. Aaron, you went off to DC. What was like the culminating moment? I know you ended up getting into real estate investment, Ryan, but like you saw some problems. Let's talk about like problem identification and kind of like what it's not oftentimes. And I also want to maybe comment a little bit. Like I think it's interesting. A lot of people don't identify themselves as business people sometimes, right? And like there's a business school at Michigan State, but everyone who goes here will ultimately probably go work for some sort of business, right? Generally speaking. And kind of like how you identify as a business person or a founder, right? Especially in entrepreneurship is kind of an interesting path. Like I think it's always a meandering path, but I'd love to know like post-graduation kind of what was the moment that you were like, oh, okay, like I've seen enough of this problem. It's time for us to do something about it.
I think we saw a lot of problems. Realistically, I mean, I took a year off in between undergrad and what I thought was going to be law school, and I ended up, being an entrepreneur, you always fall into it. It's where you see the problem and somebody really not addressing it, and you believing in yourself enough to think, yes, I can go out there and actually do it. So the big thing that I was doing, at least in Michigan State, as we were tossing around ideas, is I built a nonprofit originally called the Medical Amnesty Initiative. So here at Michigan State is like where medical amnesty originally started. And when I graduated and before trying to get into law school, just recognized there weren't people out there like actually trying to advocate for this. And so that's where that need ultimately came up. And then the need to fundraise for that, and then the need for Ryan and I to find an idea that we became passionate about, and then the need to kind of fund that business and figure out how do we get to that point. So it's really about recognizing that there's stuff that you guys do on a day-to-day basis, all day, every day, that you take advantage of the idea that this is just the way things are done. But there's always opportunities typically to either find a new opportunity or iterate on something that already exists, but you believe that you can ultimately do it better. I mean, you lived this. I mean, at the end of the day, like, you know, we always tell people, Ryan got sick of buying insurance in the real estate space, and I got sick of selling it when I started to get into that market, and ultimately just started talking to enough people to figure out that it was actually an issue.
So tell me a little bit about the space that Obie operates in now, and what it does. And you've thrown out some interesting statistics during our conversations around commercial real estate and kind of the unknown marketplace that was there that you guys have been kind of working towards servicing, I suppose.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know the real estate investment world, a lot of people fall into it or have been ordained or indoctrinated into it through family. A lot of times it's connections. But the funny thing is everybody will have you believe that if you read the Washington Post that Blackstone or Wall Street owns all the property in East Lansing or in Detroit or wherever. And the reality is that most of the real estate that's owned in the United States, at least for investment purposes, is owned by smaller mom and pop operators. So I know it seems like a crazy number, but anything that really falls under about $500 million worth of assets can be owned and operated by a very small team of individuals, and then more or less you outsource the additional facets of a business. So I need legal, I need property management, I need somebody to execute on maintenance tasks, whatever it might be. You end up outsourcing that, and when you get to a much broader scale, which I've worked at one of those companies too, you have all those people in-house. You can kind of walk down the hall and say, hey, Barb, I have an issue with some tenant that won't pay. Can you write them a nasty note and get them to pay, or either get them on an eviction proceeding? What we started out with at Obie was actually a way to kind of bundle all of those external pieces together and get them into one location where they're ultimately sharing data and knowledge and having one central place of truth. And we decided that we were going to sell third-party vendor services and just start picking them off one by one. And the most lucrative and problematic issue that we found was actually in the insurance world. So for better or for worse, you guys probably are not owners of homes, but when you buy a property and you have a bank loan you money for that property, they require you to get an insurance policy on it. So at the end of the day, we wanted to sell a product that historically people had already been buying, and we were just going to speed it up, make it a little less painless, both when they purchase a policy or also when they ultimately have to file a claim, which is part of the insurance world. It's a really interesting financial product that I think we started peeling away layers of the onion along the way, and we were able to find that ultimately I think we had one person describe it best. It's the largest social contract you'll ever enter into. So everybody pays into a giant pool of money, and you may not have a claim, but I do, and your money is actually going to help rebuild my house in the event that there's a problem. And this happens broadly across investment properties or home ownership, whatever. And if it wasn't for insurance, also, no one would ever be able to take a risk on anything. So you want to be a business owner, you want to own property, you want to buy a car, and you want to get a loan on it. Guess what? That insurance product's actually helping that lender allow you to purchase that property or that asset. So really, really, really important financial product. And we ultimately, when we were amassing all these customers together, they said, we got all these problems with insurance. It's super antiquated.
Brokers.
Right, just two middlemen all over the place, email, back and forth. It takes me 7 days to get something that I actually want to pay for. And we said, hey, we'll do it quicker, better, faster. And that's where we ended up landing. And we, for better or for worse, threw away about 2 years worth of work and code in order to pivot into the product that we sell today. And a lot of it was based on just listening to customer feedback over and over and over again and hearing the same problem come up. And ultimately it it made us a lot better.
Yeah, and I think that's the important point here too. I mean, the original version of Obie literally doesn't exist anymore. I mean, this asset management, this digital management platform is something Ryan and I poured like our own money plus like blood, sweat, and tears in, and it was very hard, I think, early on for probably a good 2-year period to go out and do these demos and have people really excited about it. And then you start talking about it like, oh, we're going to monetize through insurance. And it's like everybody we were talking to completely forgot about the last half hour of the demo that we just showed them, and they only wanted to complain about how much of a pain it is to work in the insurance space. And something that our investors and mentors and YC and a bunch of these folks finally like beat into our minds was, you want to be able to fail fast and you want to be able to fail forward. Like figuring out that probably not the entire thing of what you built you need to throw away, but there's something inside of that you can take and continue to iterate on. We had a mentor in Chicago who very early on, without a lot of information about Obie and about us, but had seen enough companies, told us like, listen guys, you need to do one thing and do it well. You're going to talk to customers, they're going to ask for a ton of stuff, but like figure out that one thing that you can do well, that one problem you're solving, that one thing that can make you $1 of revenue for this business, and continue to grow from that. And that's something that took Ryan and I a really long time and a lot of money to ultimately figure out, but it is really true, and it is something that is powerful in terms of listening to what your customers think. And really utilizing that to iterate on what your idea is and continue to bring that forward.
It's so tempting to always want to add more features, right? But
and you don't want to do, because everybody thinks they have like, you're going to go show it and people are going to be excited, and that's great, right? Like the best thing you want is a potential customer who's excited about what it is that you're doing. But with that excitement comes, let me tell you the other 100 things that are a real pain in the ass for me, right? And then you're like, oh, I'm going to go build that for you, and they're going to be even more excited. And it's so important to kind of put that on a piece of paper and say, yeah, we're going to get to that. That's absolutely important. But take the thing that you went in there for that they got excited about, get them to sign up, right? And take that exact same idea and find 10 more people, 5 more people, 1 additional person that also thinks that that's the exact same issue. And then kind of keep a like almost little ticks on a piece of paper. Every time somebody says the same feature that you keep hearing, that's how you're going to decide what your next thing is. But you can't get to that because otherwise you've got feature creep. I mean, I wish I could show you guys on the screen here all the features that the original Obie had. You're drowning in trying to launch.
And all of them aren't bad. They're just not exactly what everyone wants, right? Like, yeah.
And there's no way for a small growing company to address the needs. I mean, at scale, before we finally decided, hey, it's painful, but we're gonna like not throw away the code, we're gonna zip it up into a file and throw it onto a flash drive and put it into a safe somewhere and never think about it. But like, there were so many good mini businesses inside that platform. Each one of them could have been the business on their own. But it really just became like, which one has the biggest market, which is the one that we have the best penetration, the best product market fit, and really attack that.
Insurance is clunky. It's worth having technology that makes it better, right? Like it's such a great observation when we talk about customer discovery and just talking to people, but actually listening, right? Like not selling, but listening to what they're telling you is the problem they're experiencing. I think it's cool. Well, you alluded to this, so this is kind of an interesting path you guys went down. I'd love to hear about your story in founding Obie and then raising the capital in order to actually build it, and then what it was like to go through Y Combinator. And maybe you can take a little bit of detour. I'm sure most people in the room are sort of familiar with what Y Combinator might be. It's kind of the foremost tech accelerator in the United States, maybe globally, right? At least track record-wise, some of the biggest names in tech have been traditionally alums of YC. And it's a really good accomplishment to get in there. But you guys have pretty funny stories about that whole process too. So if you can talk to us about funding Obie, what that process was like, what it was like to raise money in the Midwest, what it was like to go through YC. That's a long, maybe there's like 4 questions there, but
you can take the first half.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of those are a little loaded.
It's okay. We can be really transparent here.
Yeah.
People here need to know what it's like to raise money here.
Yeah. Raising money's hard. I know everybody sees these very glamorous XYZ company raised $100 million or $1 million or $10 million. At the end of the day, Aaron and I think, feel like congressmen. Once you're on this hamster wheel and you're raising money and you're growing a business and you need more money to fund continued growth of that business, you have to keep going to the well. So we've gone now through 4 different funding rounds, and it's super challenging. In the Midwest, it's even harder. But when we founded Obie, we had no network. You know, we blew through 80 grand using an outsourced developer group. Neither of us had CS backgrounds, right? Like we couldn't open up a code editor and see what was on the screen and understand, you know, what was trash and pinball parts and what actually was a working product.
I still can't do that, just as a side note.
So we went through a lot of brain damage. You know, early on we raised some money from friends and family, and ultimately that money went, I hate to say it, down the toilet to a company that didn't produce anything for us. So what I would say in the learnings out of that is if you're ready to start a company, be ready to roll up your sleeves and do whatever it takes. And for me, that was, I had no CS background. I started deconstructing websites in my free time, which I didn't have a lot of. And I would go into code editors and figure out how HTML worked, and then, you know, watch online programming sites and figure out how to write a little bit of JavaScript. And before you knew it, we were able to piece together a prototype to show people. And I think that still lives true today. Nothing that goes on in our business right now is something, if we ask somebody to do it, that we wouldn't do ourselves. I'll go and door knock and sell product to, you know, no-name XYZ property manager in the middle of nowhere, because they're a distribution source for us to sell insurance premium. I ask that of our salespeople, but they know that push comes to shove, if I had to, I'd do it myself. And I think, you know, ultimately, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be delegating those tasks, but I think nothing should be above or beneath you at the end of the day. I mean, I can't tell you how important it is to be a cockroach, as we've alluded to. If you want to make sure that something is going to succeed, it's going to take more than just, you know, pointing your finger and saying, hey, I'm going to let this sell itself, or let somebody else do something that, you know, ultimately, you know, you should be able to manage and do on your own.
Yeah, I think, you know, so we raised that initial capital, started building out the product here in the Midwest. We were living in Chicago, and you know, it's tough, as Ryan said. I mean, it's hard to raise money outside of the coast. It's definitely possible, but we were post-product, post-revenue, and I think, you know, for us, we didn't. Fundraising is a game, and you got to learn what the rules of the game ultimately are in order to be successful in that game. Much like anything, right? If you go to Spartan Stadium on a Saturday, like there's a game to be played there, and you figure out the ways in which you win. You know, and for better or for worse, I think it's also the stuff that people don't know when they're going into these situations. Ryan and I talked to VCs in Chicago and around the Midwest, like for like a year, right? Nonstop, because inherently their job is to talk to you, for better or for worse. We have very good friends that are VCs, I don't mind saying this. But like, they're gonna continue to talk to you the more time you ultimately give them, because their job is to find investments. For every 100 conversations they have, they might make a single investment out of it. So there's no downside to talk to you. And I think that's something that Ryan and I got clouded on because we didn't know. We thought fundraising for a venture-backed startup was like fundraising for a real estate asset. You have a good product, you can find some people, you can bring it in and get it done, and it's not what we found. And so we wasted a significant amount of time talking to funds that couldn't lead, right? You have funds just inherently, there are 2 types of kind of venture funds, especially at the pre-seed and seed round. You have funds that'll lead and funds that won't. And candidly, it's a complete and utter waste of your time to talk to anybody that can't lead your round. We spent a lot of time talking to people that couldn't lead our round, when we should have spent all our time finding people that actually could write that first conviction check. And it's hard to do that. We were talking to an MSU grad actually yesterday who is, you know, pitching like really good funds, but like they're bigger funds, they're Series A, Series B, like tier 1 funds. They're not going to invest. Like they're not even with what we've done. I'm not going to get a seed check from you know, Andreessen right now necessarily, just because it's not what they normally do. And so learning the rules of that game and then figuring out how powerful a network can be in order to be able to give you the traction to be able to do that. So we didn't know through 2018 and the early 2019, even some when we were like sick as dogs and flew out to California because we got some meetings with folks. We didn't know how to play this game. We gave them as much time, as much information, answering as many questions as they had. And got to a point where we almost like shut down the company because we couldn't fundraise. We were post-product, post-revenue, and just didn't have the network. And all throughout this entire time, I think what's probably an important data point, even though we finally got in, like we had applied to YC 7 times. You can apply twice a year, and we applied basically 6 times over 3 years, and finally we had our effort, I won't say the actual thing, like application at the end, where we answered the questions in like 1 sentence, right? Like instant insurance for real estate investors, next question, right? Because we just figured, screw it, like let's see what happens. And I think that's the other kind of lesson in that
It turns
game.
out that's what they wanted.
Oh,
Right?
1,000%. If you saw our first application, you would have been reading like a James Madison end of term paper, right, in terms of what Obie was doing. And our last one would take you maybe 30 seconds to get through. But again, that's the next rule to that game, which is whether you're pitching an investor, a customer, or YC, the goal wasn't actually to get them to buy. The goal wasn't to get them to invest right then and there. The goal was to make it to the interview, because then you get 10 minutes to make your case, right? And so it's still about learning that, that game and the rules of the game in order to be really successful.
Yeah, I think the funny thing that we hit on and we didn't realize until we had seen the volume of applications. Y Combinator must get 10,000 applications per cohort for roughly what used to be 100 companies, 150 companies, right? If each one of those takes 30 seconds, that means they're processing 5,000 minutes worth of applications. So you get even more scientific. You know that humans read at 220 words a minute. Maybe a YC, alum or whoever's working these applications is better than most humans, and they read at 250 words a minute. That means you have 125 words to get through your application to get enough conviction to have them fly you out. I can't tell and harp enough on, if you're pitching a business, stupid, simple. It needs to be digestible in 2 sentences max. They need to know what you're doing, your value prop, and then they can get to the fun stuff where we talk about how big the market is and all these other things. But if you can't give somebody what you do in that amount of time, you've lost them.
Yeah.
In your value prop, to convince them was basically a six-word sentence, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, right? And you should be able to read out loud, and you're like, okay, I get it now, right?
Yep.
And take no explanation.
Yeah, I mean, at an early stage, what I don't think we appreciated, but we started to figure out as we spent a lot of time with founders on the coast and venture investors just broadly throughout the U.S. was they want to know, can they understand what it is that you're doing? If you don't have that down, then you're not going to get anywhere, because anybody that you're asking to invest in you and put money into you is going to say, all right, well, how good are you at actually selling this product? And if I, as a venture investor, don't understand what you're doing, then your customers aren't either. So that's your first gate.
It's a proxy for can you sell?
Yeah, and then your next gate is basically, how big is the market, and does this team have the experience or the conviction to be able to get there, right? That's the only questions you need to ask at a pre-seed or a seed stage company. Right? Ryan and I still had some kind of code that we couldn't let go of the original Obie, but somebody out there said, okay, instant insurance for real estate investors, right? Real estate investors, $130 billion in premium a year. They do it instantly. Apparently it takes 7 to 10 business days. They'll take these 2 kids from Michigan State's word for it. And the market's big enough. So we think it'll work, right? Or we think that the team is iterative enough to recognize that the market here is big enough. So again, you can fail forward. You can continue to build your product out and continue to move forward, but the market's big enough where it's forgiving, right? It's harder to do that if the market's only 100 million, 500 million, even a $1 billion market. It's harder to fail in the forward direction and continue to generate revenue. For better or for worse, we're still learning this market, but it's big enough where the company can continue to grow as we continue to grow with it.
So you head out west for basically half a year-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that experience like compared to what you were doing in Chicago?
Like nothing we've probably ever experienced.
I had gotten married 60 days prior, and I told my wife.
By the way,
yeah,
I'm leaving.
Hi. This marriage thing is good, but I'm actually going to run to California for about 6 months and get this stuff figured out. You wouldn't believe the amount of work that gets done and the brain power in a room filled with hungry young YC founders. I swear the group of people in there could have, if you gave them enough sandwiches to survive off of, could have found an early indication cure for cancer. I'm not even kidding. They're just the amount of brain power that was in there is just unbelievable. And you see all these companies, and now they're our friends, people that have raised hundreds of millions of dollars and have, $50, $100 million revenue businesses, and they just started them 4 years ago. It's remarkable what comes out of there and what the peer level expectations and the pressure to perform when you're amongst a crew like that. You go into large groups to eat dinner, and you sit where you guys are sitting right now, and Brian Chesky, the founder of Airbnb, is on stage telling you about all the crazy stuff that they did while they were there. I mean, the network and the people that you just interact with is like nothing you've ever seen. So I think the long and the short of that allows a lot of investors to come in and just make bets because of all of that information that gets distilled down. And I say it's like an MBA education that happens in 5 months, and it's probably
Probably better.
it's probably the equivalent of that.
No offense. I love our MBA program. But, yeah.
So, we came out of YC. We still had a little early signs of traction. We had just sold a $700,000 insurance policy that netted us almost $100,000 in revenue. Nice way to end demo day at YC. And inside a week, we went from having no fundraising dollars to raising $2.8 million. And that was our springboard. We managed our money extremely wisely. Going back into that cockroach mentality, we got an office and we funded it with Amazon return furniture. And I kid you not, there's warehouses everywhere that if you return anything to Amazon, it ends up in one of these locations, and you get to buy it and bid on it for pennies on the dollar. We bought everything for our office more or less secondhand. And in that iteration process, that if you put an extra 50 grand into your office, well, that's $50,000 less engineering salary that I have to spend. So that's a half a human being at a junior level that I could have crunching code for 6 months. So instead of doing that, we grew and we iterated, and we grew and we iterated, and we went from being a company that basically solicited everyone else's insurance products. So I could be selling you Travelers or State Farm or Liberty Mutual, or you guys see their commercials, or stuff that pops up in app all the time.
Auto owners.
Yep. There you go, bingo. To then saying, hey, we think that we can build a product ourselves that's better than what's being currently offered in the market. So we went from basically, selling somebody else's t-shirts to now we're gonna go to, a place and get a loom and build our own t-shirts and then sell them ourselves because we think the material's better or whatever. So at this point, where Obie's at, we have our own in-house actuarial team, underwriting. We create the insurance product that we sell.
Note to self, that is a major here at Michigan State for those of you who want to get into this business.
Huh.
They're always looking to hire.
Yeah.
Obie's growing.
That is very true.
Yeah.
There are openings on the website. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, what we tell people is we set out to make it as easy as you sitting on your couch in your underwear on a Saturday morning and buying insurance without having to talk to anybody. Right? And before Obie, it would take you 7 to 10 business days, a couple of PDF applications, phone, email, fax machine. We took a fax machine to a pitch actually in Chicago once because we were trying to make an impact, which still remembers us, never wrote us a check.
Fax machine guys.
I think one thing to really, I hate to use this term, but double click on is it's such a tech thing to do. Not peer pressure, but in a really good way, what YC allowed you to do, and I think what kind of the entrepreneurial community, even the business school here to some extent, that community, what they forced us to do, you have the really big group of all the YC founders. Once a week, every Thursday night, you have dinner at massive picnic tables at their office in Mountain View. But otherwise, you get broken down into these mini groups, and there's 6 companies that are in there, maybe 12 people total with the founders, and then a couple of YC partners, all very successful folks that have gone through this, have seen the issues and the landmines that we would run into. And you start every single meeting, ours was on like Tuesday afternoon, with what is your one-liner and like what's your one metric that you're gonna have. And you decide that when you get there, right? And so you decide on what the metric is, and you start the first one with like, what's your one-liner? If you can't get through it, if you stumble through it, if it's not clear, they're gonna be tough on you, but like, it's gonna get better by the end of it. And by demo day, it was very clear what it was that we did. And then they helped us decide on like, what is the metric that you actually want to drive towards? What's the metric that's important for you? The one single thing that you can drive towards. Because at that stage, like not a lot else matters. Maybe it's active users, maybe it's revenue, maybe it's signups, maybe it's if you're in biotechnology, like drug trials, like whatever that one shining star is that you can get to. And then that's your accountability metric. So we would get there every week, and like you don't want to be the company that didn't hit your next metric, right? Ours was revenue, ours was premium, gross written premium that we would sell. And you don't want to get to that table and everybody else is hustling and Obie didn't hit it this week. And you're not getting that pressure from them, but like you're putting it on yourself in an otherwise pretty supportive community that does push you to get better.
Yeah. So in that fundraising process, I know we have a lot of young, interested entrepreneurs here. Can you tell us a little bit about like what it means to raise venture capital, maybe for folks who haven't thought about it, right? These people want their money back.
Right? Imagine that.
By a multiple.
By a
And,
multiple.
and kind of what does that do to you as founders, or what does your process go through? Like, I mean, I love the fact that you guys are so scrappy and you're buying, there's a lot of people who aren't scrappy like that. Like, oh, sweet, we got these big checks. Let's go buy some fancy furniture, right? Like,
Yeah, don't do
there's a
that.
lot of ways to spend money poorly.
Yeah.
But what is that expectation like? And generally speaking, like there's a way to look at this as very adversarial. Some people are like, I'm not taking other people's money. But most good investors, and you guys have had to vet yours as well, right? It's a two-way street. You want the right partners to invest in you because they're going to bring something to the table that helps you grow too, right?
Yeah. I mean, at this point, we've easily talked to 500 VCs, easily. If not more. Yeah, I mean, I think it is a two-way street. And I was talking to some folks at the Hatch earlier today. There is always a path, right, to bootstrapping a company, right? And I give kind of the Shark Tank example, which Ryan and I kind of grew up on. But you'll have products that go in there, and like Lori and Mark and Robert and everybody, and Mr. Wonderful, they'll sit there and be like, you've got a really good business here. This isn't something that you probably want to take money from. And now they're selfishly saying that because it's probably something that like at a venture scale isn't going to get them the return that they ultimately need. But you can build a really big business without taking money. You're not going to get the TechCrunch article that so-and-so raised a bunch of money, but like it is a very viable path. But if you do take it, like there is I was going to say kind of figuratively a social contract, but also a real contract. They expect a return. They expect a big return, and somebody told us early on, like venture dollars are like the cocaine highway, right? Like, or the hamster wheel. You can't get off that wheel once you got started, because you have to go into it eyes wide open that there is a big exit, or
the valuation must go up.
It has to.
Right? Yeah.
That's the only way venture math ultimately works. And I think going into that, like being very clear-eyed, and there's a very specific way of being successful with that. We've figured for better or for worse, have enough bruises and broken bones internally to prove we've learned the rules of the game at this point. And certainly something after this we can talk to any of you about, but there is an expectation that exists there. I mean, Ryan and I had our board meeting yesterday. Our only other board member is a guy named Michael Brown. He's the one of the managing partners at Battery, and he's been there for 25 years, and Battery's a massive firm at this point. And you gotta be on your shit. Yeah.
This guy, when he invests $1, he wants $10 back.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's the easiest way to look at it. In a very short amount of time.
7 to 10 years.
Because they're also beholden to
They're LPs.
their LPs, which candidly could be Michigan State. It could be State Farm Insurance Company. It could be a whole host of people. And if they make bad investments, that means the money that Michael Brown makes in asset management fees and all the other things that allow him to operate as a business owner, as a fund manager, cease to exist. So, he has to come up with something that produces on average a 12 to 15% IRR at a minimum every year. And if a fund's lifetime is 10 years. That means he needs to produce results. And the reality is they don't get into this, thinking that they're gonna hit singles all day long.
Right.
The math is 8 will fail, 1 will do.
1 returns the fund.
1 will return the fund, and 1 will explode the fund. And that's the expectation. And you need to make sure that when you do take that $10, or in our case probably 40 million at this point, that we're going to return $400 million worth of company value back to our investors when we sell. And you got to do that pragmatically, and you have to remember that you got to talk out of 2 sides of your mouth a little bit, and make sure that you're doing right for them, and then also doing right for your employees, and knowing that every dollar you take in, every dollar in revenue is feeding somebody's family, it's paying bills, it's paying a mortgage, and you need to take it extremely seriously.
Yeah.
Because this is also part of mine and Aaron's permanent reputation as well. So like the free money doesn't come next time if we materially screw it up, or we're bad actors. So that it's really important to notate that not every company is the Sam Bankman-Frieds and the FTXs of the world, but that is something to very much consider as you take venture dollars, that it's not a game at the end of the day.
Right. Turns out they want their money back. So let's talk about this kind of, I think, a fun conversation for maybe people a fun topic to talk about is what it's like to co-found with a family member. In this case, your brother. Like, how does that work from a family dynamic perspective? Pros and cons. This is a therapy session.
I mean,
your host,
he came over for Thanksgiving
airing of
dinner,
grievances.
so it's still working out okay.
Right. Parents are happy still.
Yeah.
Okay.
My mom's very happy still.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's harder on our spouses than it is on us.
Oh, 1,000%.
Because they have to listen to you complain about each other.
Well, no.
Okay.
Well, there's some of that, but Thanksgiving dinner's like, well, do you think we're actually
You're
going to do
gonna
like 15%
you're gonna talk about
bump over-
business, right?
Yeah. Like, I think we might have a lull in May. Do we think we can make that up and do 20% month over month in June? And like the spouses our wives are just looking at each other
Staring
like
at each
they
other.
want to kill us.
Yeah.
So.
Negatives. Let's start there, and we'll work our way.
Wow.
That's right. Up and to the right.
I think we don't have a traditional sibling relationship. Aaron's right. We don't talk about sibling stuff. I don't, you see sibling interactions. If you guys all have siblings, you might call them and ask them how their day's going. Well, I spent my entire day with them,
Right. There's really no reason to
I don't have
follow
that
up.
luxury.
Right.
Our conversations are siloed and committed to business related activities. And I wouldn't say that it creates more of a transactional type of relationship, and I actively work on trying to not make it as transactional, but the byproduct of working with a sibling is that's what and how it ends up.
We occasionally talk about other things.
Yeah. But at the end of the day,
Oh, mom's calling about something again.
Yeah.
you're isolated with business stuff. So, big positives is he does a lot of things really well that I don't have any desire to do.
Like diplomatic HR emails or.
So, we're definitely a yin and a yang situation that allows us to not step on each other's toes. I would pause if I was entering into a sibling business relationship where we both like doing the exact same thing. In all honesty, that would probably end up in a lot of arguments and not end well. So I think the tail wags the dog a little bit in our relationship, which is really a really great thing. And blood is thicker than water. A lot of VCs frown upon a sibling relationship. You wouldn't believe how many times we went in and people said,
We don't do family businesses.
that's a little too close for us. We had a bad relationship with spouses going into whatever whatever their preconceived notion was. But for us, I think we are still able to act accordingly as family members, and
There's a level of trust there.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, like,
right?
I mean, we would always kind of turn our head a little bit every time we would hear that, because the biggest reason that companies kind of Series A and prior ultimately fail is not actually product market fit issues. It's usually founder fallout is one of the biggest things, right? It's an applicable example here. It's like being very selective with who your roommate is, right? Because you might have a great relationship, might not live together really well, right? And so like figuring out who a good co-founder is like super important. Because it is what drives a lot of the failures of otherwise like really brilliant companies. There is an entire market out there if somebody's looking for something of like picking up the pieces of really good companies that fell apart because of some type of co-founder fallout or co-founder conflict. So Ryan and I would always kind of laugh at that because we say, listen, like at the end of the day, if you have a co-founder that you're not related to, like business can go under, you guys can walk away and never talk to each other ever again. Like I have to see him regardless of anything
Where
going
this
on.
thing ends up. Right?
Yeah, like our mom would kill us if this wasn't going to work out. So there is that pressure to be able to do that. But to Ryan's point, we do very different things, right? I mean, I think that's evidenced even from our initial conversation here. Ryan is very big picture, like very architect, very creative. I literally could not come up with what a good design would be to save my life. I can tell you it looks good, right? But like I would never be able to tell you how to get there. At the same time, like Ryan's not going to be the one to like draft a legal document, right? Like that's very James Madison of me. Like I will write in prose to write out like SOPs and docs and like statements of work and like requirements for things. Like I will do that all day, every day. And so it works out nicely. To his point, you don't necessarily want people that do the exact same thing. I mean, that's how you run into conflicts, whether you're related or whether you even have a kind of a co-founder relationship. So for us, it nicely works out, fortunately.
That's awesome. So I got the 10-minute warning. Okay, it's time to move to Q&A. I was going to say I had one more question, but we'll get to it. I like to open the floor up to the audience now. The first question's always the hardest, so hopefully someone here is brave enough to ask, and then we'll go from there. And we got a microphone. We'll pass around. Questions?
You're right. The first one's always the hardest.
It's hard. We just got to learn to be patient. That's one thing I've learned.
There we go.
There we go. Floodgates now.
So as brothers, what would you guys say was one of the greatest conflicts you guys came across, and how did you overcome that?
It was probably when we were like trying to figure out to actually like fully commit to the pivot at the end of the day. Like Ryan put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into the platform. Building that first version, like picking up the fact that we got completely screwed by the outsourcing group. Kind of to no fault to our own, but also our fault. We didn't know enough to know what we were even doing. And I was very much like, just scrap the whole thing and like go on to the other piece. So I think that was probably the biggest one we've had.
Yeah. Business is a roller coaster. I would say there's tireless ups and downs. I wouldn't pinpoint anything specific. I think, fundraising when times are tight and money's tight is never a great thing. I try and black out, I would say, some of the bad times, because if you spend so much time thinking about what could have been or what should have been or what didn't happen, or the VC, we had a VC that made me run a financial model while I was on my bachelor party.
Yes.
If I harped on all those like kind of not so amazing things, you wouldn't get anywhere further than just sitting there and kind of idolizing negative consequences of whatever you ended up doing.
Yeah, I don't think anything inherent to us being related, probably. I mean, maybe some get a little more heated than others because, like, we can go there, right? Like, he's been trying to break my arm for the last 33 years. Like, why change now? Yeah, I mean, I think continuing to like level each other up. We're building a business now that's bigger than anything we've ever done, right? Like, I've always been like a solopreneur, right? Like, I've always been a solo operator on a lot of the stuff that I had done beforehand. So our frustrations, but like our also areas of growth have really come from continuing to level up the company. We've never run a company with 100 employees before. Like you figure out how to continue to grow.
It's a good first question. Let's follow up here.
All right, I take it you guys have met a lot of people and made a lot of connections, and I'd like to know what were the kind of events where you would say you've made the most connections or the most valuable?
So we were talking about this in the hatch earlier. While YC is great, we have this enormous group of entrepreneurs that are now in network. And when we have problems, we call people that are a stage ahead of us. It's really easy. That has been an enormous resource for us as operators. From a fundraising area, if you want to fundraise a business, you need to exploit the people's networks that can ultimately also write checks. So our first real check that came in the door came from a gentleman that is still our mentor. His name is Matt McInnes. He's the chief operating officer of a software company called Rippling out in the Valley. And ironically, adjacent to taking hundreds of meetings and hours chatting with VCs in the Midwest, we met with him for coffee for 30 minutes. And he said, I'll write you a $50,000 check. And I represent Sequoia as a VC, and I'm writing it out of their scout fund. I'm a scout for Sequoia.
Didn't go into that meeting thinking that he was investing, right? He was an interested guy, and at the end of it, he's like, yeah, I'd love to invest.
So
that was our inflection point.
He came to us from somebody in network, and then he was able to. There is a funny paradigm that goes on inside the Valley or even in the coast that people want to win and lose together, so they'll get all their friends involved, and you use that as leverage to continue to, add more and more snow to the snowball and collect mass as you're kind of rolling down the hill. I would say always ask people for a referral in some way, shape, or form. And I worked with one entrepreneur that came to me for advice, and I'll hold this always. You ever want money, ask for advice.
If you ask for money, you're going to get advice.
Yeah.
It's the other way around, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So always come to somebody asking for advice. And I opened up my network to a startup last year, and he ran the process to a T based on our experience. And I had no problem giving him everyone we knew, making intros. And your network is your strongest advocate for survival sometimes. Like, take who you talk to, and if they're convicted enough to write a check, they should also be in a position to know other people that can help you amass more cash to start your business. So their job is to help kind of get things going, and I would say pick as wisely as you can with those.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, also don't be afraid to ask. But it does require some effort, and that's why a lot of like VCs, if we keep going back to investors, but it's the best kind of example is, a lot of folks will say, listen, like, you got to find a warm intro to me, right? And that's because they just get so much deal flow through the door, like they're not going to take a lot of the stuff that might come through the website. But they also want to see if, like, somehow you can, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon it, right? Like, you want to see if you have the hustle to be able to get there, which means you have the hustle to be able to sell your product. And that eventually rang true for us. The challenge for us is, like, we were in the Midwest, we didn't know where to start. But there's a lot of good lessons there, a lot of stuff that, any of you that want to ping us, like, we got plenty of scar tissue on how to not do this, and then now how to successfully, like, run a process and build a network.
Got one back.
Hi, guys. If you were back in our situation in college, and knowing what you guys know now, what would you guys do differently? So advice for the people in the room, maybe looking to start their own business.
Start something you know. I think business is business at the end of the day. It doesn't have to be a big business or a venture business. just get a little bit of experience, and that will take you really far. You know, Aaron won't tell you, but he sold more solo cups than anybody in the Midwest for a couple of years.
Let's talk about that, because this is an important lesson we talked about earlier today.
Like the hustle starts at an early point, and once you have the confidence to do that, you keep parlaying those bets further and further. So, Aaron,
I mean, this was a forcing function, but like I think in your shoes, you're like, Michigan State's what, 40,000 students at this point? 48. I mean, you have like willing adults. You have staff. Like you've got not everybody here's not adults, but like you've got willing staff, profs, like subject matter experts, your friends, a community. Like you have your testing pod like right here. And so when I was running the nonprofit, like I couldn't fundraise. I didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't even fundraise for nonprofits. So I haven't done this for a few years, so even you seniors wouldn't remember this, but. I fundraised for the nonprofit by selling red solo cups to like fraternities, to like the different athlete houses, like the soccer house and the hockey house and like all this stuff. And I literally made it up. I was like, listen, you guys go through 10,000 cups a semester, right? You should buy them from me. That way you're not going to QD at like 8 o'clock on a Thursday because nobody picked up the sleeve of cups. And so I would deliver them twice a year. And they became
giant boxes of solo cups.
Yeah, sleeves
Yeah.
of 240.
Yeah.
You can get them at Sam's Club for like $8.99. You can wholesale them down if you buy the entire semi, which is what we eventually got to, down to about like $6, and you could.
Even all of these businesses scale, right? You just got to think about
I mean,
it.
really,
Right?
it really
Yeah.
does. I mean, you guys can still do this. There's an entire cup industry that is untapped right now.
yeah, I think in 2 weekends you could work your way through a lot of the large Big Ten schools, go to all these fraternity houses and sorority houses, athlete houses, find out who the social chair is, hit them up before they've expunged all of their money for the year. And
And the best thing that we found out about college students, which I was one, so I knew this, but like you give them an excess of anything, everybody would take a sleeve, and suddenly they'd all end up in somebody else's room or somebody. Suddenly everybody's out of 10,000 cups by the middle of the semester. So they put in another order, right? And so like that's how we fundraised for the nonprofit. They became known as like the medical amnesty cups from probably like 2012 through like probably like 2016, 2017. And so, you know, you figure out a market that you can ultimately exploit. We upmarked the cups by like 35 or 40 cents, which was actually still on a cup by cup basis cheaper per unit than what you would get at QD. Because QD is gouging you because it's right there and it's convenient. So why not make money? But like those are the types of things. I started by buying 2 pallets of cups at the Sam's Club in Lansing, putting it onto a Home Depot rented truck. Terrible idea. It was the middle of winter, got stuck. Still have photos of this, and like that's how I got started. And I went up to, 2 different pallets would basically be like 10, 20, 30, probably like 70, 80,000 cups, which was really only like 8 different locations here in East Lansing. It went really well, and so we just continued to expand to the point where even Ryan and I had to run to Chicago back for a meeting, and somebody ran out of cups, and I literally stopped at the warehouse, picked up 10,000 cups, smashed them into the back of our car to the point they were like on Ryan's lap, pulled up to the house, opened up the doors, pushed them all out, they paid the check, and you move on. And like that's the small stuff that you can ultimately do. Now, that's a small business, never gonna be a venture scalable business. But it is one that'll make you like a pretty good living actually if you expanded it out. So those are the things, and like you have a captive audience here. Like you have a captive audience on market. We were trying some like protein infused ice cream earlier, which is great, but like everybody loves the dairy store. You have all these potential customers here. You have all this opportunity for like voice of customer, which is what it's called, and like you can iterate pretty quickly here as well.
That brings us to our time. The last thing on my list was to make sure we talked about the solo cup. Do we got time for one more?
We can do
We
another
got
one.
one more. We got one more. All right, one more. All right. Dave, we'll look
Yeah.
it up on the live stream.
So I just want to know what stage you think you should start applying for YC or other type programs like Techstars or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like Techstars in probably like a 500 startups. They have a bit of a different model than YC, and so I think they historically want to see a little bit of traction, a little bit of product market fit. YC, it's all about the application. We have friends that came over wanting to do like software for like bread manufacturing companies in Ireland. They came over, they did the interview, and like the YC partners were so impressed with them. They were like, hey, we hate your idea, but we love you guys. We think you can do something big, which now they have. Like, take a day and come up with another idea, or come up with 10 ideas, and like we'll tell you which one we'll fund. So it is all about being able to stick out inside the application. Again, your job for any of those, Techstars, we made it to the Techstars final interview in Chicago the summer of 2018. It's a good thing we didn't get in hindsight. We got into 500 startups the same year we got into YC, just by complete happenstance. And ultimately, your job is to get to the interview. It's not to get in, right? So what can you do in that application? What can you do in literally like 1 or 2 sentences to say like, this is the idea, this is the market, this is the team that's in place to be able to do it, and then get yourself to the interview. At the interview, you got and for YC, 10 minutes to make your case. Techstars and 500 startups, you get half hour, 45 minutes. They're gonna dig in a little bit more. But like, that's what you have to do. I would say probably half of our class came in with ideas on napkins. And then at least probably 60 to 70% of our class at YC like pivoted either to a completely different or a similar but different idea.
That's pretty amazing.
The other thing too on the YC side, one of the best ways of ultimately getting to an interview, and it's more a function of making sure the alumni read the applications, is like alumni can make referrals. We had some alums that made referrals for us. There's a whole system online for us to be able to do it. So, you know, happy to review applications, happy to do that for you guys if that's ever of interest and your company gets to that stage.
That's awesome. All right. Well, you guys can stick around for a few minutes probably.
Yeah, for
Any
sure.
other Q&A after the fact. Thanks for coming out for the first Innovate State. Let's thank Ryan and Aaron for coming today. Thanks, gents.
Thank you. Nothing like, no hot mic.